Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Jen.
How are you?
Doing really well. Doing really well. How about you?
Great. I'm
Good.
great.
Good. That's super to hear. Uh, well, we're here doing another Just the Tips with Jen and Eric.
Just another one.
It'll be a quick one today, I think. We're going to talk just a little bit more about cyber insurance, kind of a supplement to the last one that we did. Build on a little bit of the underwriting requirements is something that you wanted to touch on. It's different now than it was, even just a few months ago, right? In terms of what the insurance companies are looking for and the kind of information that they want. It used to be pretty simple. We can get somebody a cyber quote really easily, and I think we alluded to that a little bit in the last segment. But what are some of the things that you're seeing that's different than what it used to be?
Yeah. So claims have risen tremendously over the last several years. We're seeing a 50% increase generally year after year, right? So that is just incredible. And a lot of the underwriting questions that we have now focus on email security in businesses.
Hmm.
90% of breaches come in through email. That's incredible.
User error, right?
User error. It's
Yeah.
all human user error. And, once upon a time, it would be one of those things where you're like, well, just don't click on the thing where the Nigerian prince wants to give you millions of
Right.
dollars, right? Or,
They used to be a little more obvious than
right.
they are now.
Right. The person you worked with back in 1993 gets lost on vacation and needs your help.
And
Like,
you're the person
probably.
they contact, right? I
Right.
haven't talked to you in 30 years, but I'm stranded on a desert island, and you're the first person I thought of.
Right. I've been detained. Send help, send money. So those kind of things are or seem to be pretty obvious, right? But they've gotten very sophisticated. Things like something from Apple, apple.com, might come in app.ie.com,
Right.
right? And so for the average person seeing that, maybe they have an Apple account, maybe they believe they need to put their social security number in, or even just click on whatever is in that email is enough to open up that virus, get it into the system.
Right.
So a lot of the underwriting questions that we have now as supplementals, and I imagine at some point we're going to have more supplemental questions than we'll actually have application questions.
Well, they won't be supplemental anymore, will they?
No. Thank you. So some of those questions are things like, do you use an email filtering system, right? So something other than just your own common sense to say whether or not this is spam. And that filtering system would look at the email coming in, looking at attachments, looking for threats, suspicious activity, those kind of things.
Hmm.
And then they're going to ask about whether or not you use MFA, multi-factor authentication. And so you may sign into email, for instance, with your regular password, and then you may be asked to verify that through another means, whether
Hmm.
that's through, putting in another PIN, getting an email with a code, getting a text through an app. There are just, a million ways that you
Yeah.
can do MFA.
And we do that here in our office too. And I think the important thing for a potential policyholder, somebody who might be applying for this type of coverage, is, when we talk about spam filters and things like that in your email, generally, if you're a business and you're using Outlook, that's just something you can turn on, increase the sensitivity for, and uh, not that difficult to do. Multi-factor authentication is a different animal, though. That especially for larger businesses, something that might be a little more difficult, right?
For sure, for sure. So a lot of cyber carriers are requiring that MFA be in place prior to them even offering a quote. So it's one of the security features that they're insisting upon.
Even if
And you're
they've been insuring them for years.
even if they've
Yeah.
been insuring them for years. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Some of the larger firms run into a few problems with MFA, right? If it's not done properly, or there are different methods for each system that they're in, it may hold something up. We have one client in particular, we send out information encrypted,
Hmm.
and their system couldn't get the encrypted information.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to stop using that with them, right? So it's one place where something could get through. Now, obviously, we're not sending anything, but their system is such that they have some other difficulties, other hurdles that they have to get over.
There's a fine line sometimes between, ease of doing business and, security.
For sure.
And we see that in every other aspect of our lives these days too. But especially here in the world of cyber liability and cyber exposures, um, you know, our staff here internally sometimes complains a little bit about having to, enter a PIN or wait for an email to come in to verify so they can enter a code. And you know, yeah, it's a little more cumbersome and it's kind of a pain, but it's just the world we live in, and it's only going to get worse from here.
Yeah, and
Unfortunately, sorry.
right. Sorry. The truth is too that while it may be a pain, some of these are very sophisticated. Some of them work in the background. Some of them you don't even realize are an issue until it is an issue. I
Yeah,
think you'll remember a few years ago, my system got overtaken by a virus, and they
I do remember.
it had absolutely nothing to do with the websites that I was visiting on the regular.
I don't think that's been confirmed.
It's true.
The forensic team is still looking into that.
Yeah. So it was many years ago, and they took over my system, and they actually changed the server to my computer system, and so it was just sending out tons and tons of spam email. Thank God it didn't go any further than that. And like I said, this was many years ago. But I like to think of myself as a pretty astute human, and I wouldn't have just. You don't need to laugh at
No,
that.
that's good. I think that's good self-awareness.
Um, so I'd like to think of myself as being somebody who is going to recognize when something is a threat, right, or a security issue. But clearly, I didn't, or I clicked on something somewhere that allowed a bad actor to come in and to turn around my server. But
Well,
like I said, it was
look
many
pretty
years
good.
ago.
They look pretty good these
They do.
days, and a
They
lot of
do.
times it's going to look like an email that you would get every single day. They're spoof emails. They're meant to look like something that you're normally going to receive. Um, Sometimes they come from actual people that you interact with
Yeah.
regularly, and something just kind of innocuous like, "Hey, can you take a look at this?" And if you're not really in tune with what that risk is, you're probably going to be the person that opens that up and infects the entire office.
So perfect. Yeah, perfect example of that. One afternoon on a Friday, I received an email from one of our clients from the accounting department. It was a generic accounting email from that department and said, "Hey, can you take a look at the attached?" It was a contract, or what looked like a contract, but it was HTML, right? And so that's the first key that something's wrong, because a PDF is a PDF, and HTML is going to let something worm its way into your system. So I immediately responded to the accounting department and said, in a separate email, so I didn't respond to the email that was sent to me with the threat. I sent a separate email and I said, "Hey, I don't think you meant this for me. I think this maybe went to the wrong place." They responded immediately and said, "No, this is for you. Open it." So
Kind of pushy there.
yeah, they were, a little little on the pushy side. So
It's
I picked
okay.
up the
I'm a
phone.
Nigerian prince.
Right. It's
Go
okay.
ahead
I
and
have
open
money
it.
for you. So so I picked up the phone and I called the firm. Now it's Friday afternoon at like 4:40, okay? And I call and I ask for the woman in the accounting department. She's not here.
Hmm.
Okay. Now I'm, very clearly there's an issue, and I asked to speak with the principal and got him on the horn, and I said, "Hey, I think you've got an issue. I received this email." "Oh, okay. Thanks so much. We'll let IT know." I said, "I don't think you understand. They're responding to the emails. They're actively in the emails now." How smart of these bad actors, right? To be in there on a Friday, have taken control over the accounting email to see who they could get to open attachments. And it had that accounting department regularly sent me documents, maybe I wouldn't have thought twice about it.
Right,
But
right.
in this case, the only contracts I received ever were from, different folks in the firm.
Yeah.
So I knew something was going on. That and a lot of times we see emails with threats, security issues, and they bad punctuation, bad grammar, they're missing capitalization, right?
That's why most of my emails get filtered out on the other side. That exact reason.
And there we are, folks. Uh, so so sometimes you can figure them out. But the other day we got an email that looked great, right? It had all of the right punctuation and capitalization, and it had a signature. A lot of times these don't have signatures on them. Um, but they look pretty good. So that filter that you might have in your email to identify attachments that may be an issue and send them over to your junk email with a nice little warning, that's helpful because even people like me who are pretty good at identifying whether or not something is a threat, sometimes things slip through. Mm-hmm. So that leads to the third question that we see very often in underwriting for these supplementals for cyber liability and data breach, usually specific to ransomware, because that was ransomware, they're really getting in through emails. And that is annual training on phishing. Right. So not the swimmy kind, but the email kind, the ones that we're talking about, how to identify those emails and when to be concerned.
Because let's face it, from an insurance company's perspective, you can have all of the security systems in place that are offered. You can have, an IT department in-house that's looking at these things and, all of the protocols in place. But at the end of the day, it's the person sitting at the computer opening the emails that really dictates whether or not these things come through.
Yeah.
And so that training is super important and now becoming a requirement.
And now becoming a requirement, an annual requirement for staff to be able to recognize phishing emails when they haven't been caught by the filtering system, mm-hmm. And otherwise make their way through so that you're not clicking on something. And don't forward it, right? Don't forward it to your IT department. Think about, if you ever get involved in email campaigns, we do, right? So mm-hmm. we're always looking at who's opening the email, who's forwarding an email, who's looking at an attachment. We get those analytics, maybe not specific people necessarily, but
just numbers,
we see
hits,
that
things like that. Yeah.
We see the originating email, right? Mm-hmm. So if I'm if I'm a bad actor, if I'm looking to find out which are active emails, because I'm not really targeting you, I'm just targeting everyone, right? I want to throw that net as wide as I can. See, that was another phishing joke.
I see why they say that. Yeah. I understand it now.
Got it. So I want to throw this wide net and I want to catch as many people as I can. And if Jane at abccompany.com is forwarding my email and it's getting forwarded to here and to here and to here and to here, I know that Jane at ABC email is a legitimate email. And I'm going to start hitting them with more and more and more. So don't forward them. Mm-hmm. Identify them as being a problem. If you have to call an IT person to take a look at your email, just do not open it. Just let them, you see it in the preview window, and then otherwise get rid of it as soon as you can. Don't click on anything inside of it.
And so let's sum this up.
Sure.
The buying process for cyber liability is really a lot more difficult than it used to be.
Absolutely. It used to be, it was a website.
Yeah.
They would do a vulnerability test to see whether or not there were holes or ways that anyone could get into your system or extract information.
Which, let's face it, those were a little bit kind of hokey marketing things that the insurance companies were doing. They didn't really have a lot of, backbone to what the data or the analysis that came back really showed, right?
Right. So they were doing those vulnerability testing, and they'd give you this fancy schmancy report to tell you, where some of your vulnerabilities were. And, some of it's legitimate, some of it's useful, right. But it's certainly not like the penetration testing that they're doing now to see where bad
actors. A lot more invasive.
Hence the name.
Oh.
Yeah, this is really going to push the boundaries of our maturity here. But penetration testing helps IT folks figure out where true vulnerabilities are in a system, right? So the vulnerability testing that cyber carriers used to do was a little bit more, of a high level look, and this gets a little bit deeper.
Right, and so where. You or I used to be able to just contact an insurance company and say, hey, give me a cyber quote for this firm. Here's some basic information about that firm. They'd give us a number and we'd go back and deliver that quote. Now, firms really need to get their IT departments involved. If they outsource it to a third party, they have to be involved in the process, just because there's so much information that the insurance companies are looking for now during the underwriting process that most business owners aren't going to be able to answer those application questions or the supplemental questions without the involvement of their IT folks.
Oh, for sure. There are phrases that I have no idea what they mean. And
Yeah.
then, a couple of months later, it's like, I've always known what it meant, right? Because I've talked about it so many times. But for the folks that are filling out that application first time, yeah, for sure. They're going to need their IT folks.
So fair warning, you heard it here first. It's gonna be more of a process. So just be prepared for that.
Yeah.
Be understanding of that. Looking at it from, the underwriter's perspective. They're putting, significant limits on the line for a risk that's changing constantly. So that's why if last year you put a policy in place, this year it might be a different animal. But that's why we're talking about it. Get
Yeah.
the word out and make sure nobody's blindsided by all of the different factors, not just the underwriting differences that we're talking about today, but the rate changes and the exposure changes and things like that we've been talking about in prior Just the Tips episodes and that you've been probably hearing all over the place lately.
Yeah.
And with the conflict overseas, it's probably gonna just continue to ramp up and really become more in the forefront of our minds and our discussions and renewal process and everything else. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. So any questions about it, please reach out to us. We're going to do our best to get you those applications and those supplements as quickly and as early in the process as we can, so you have enough time. There still are some carriers who are not requiring MFA, but plan to pay for it, because that exposure, like you just said, is so extreme and changing all the time. And so if they're going to take on a risk that doesn't include things like MFA, you're going to pay for it.
Yep. All right. Well, great tips.
Great.
Great tips today. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening, whoever's out there listening.
Thanks so much.
And we'll be back with more Just the Tips next time. Thanks for joining us.